Hey everyone, it's Types. In the Pokemon TCG, there is one major deck building rule. Well, I guess there's two, which is 60 cards. But the other one is that you need to have no more than 4 copies of a card. So in decks, you see cards that are very good. They're played as 4-ofs pretty commonly. You see good cards like Boss's Orders, Badoo, Meowth and others played at not that 4-of level. We see some of the best cards played as 4-ofs, like in Dragapult EX. Dragapult EX itself isn't played as a 4-of. But the Dreepies and Dracoloaks are 4-ofs, and List Determination is also 4-of. You also see it with search cards like Ultra Ball, Pokepad, and Buddy Buddy Poffin. And I wanted to see what the game would look like and what changes would be made to decks if you could have more than 4 copies of a card. Ultimately, this kind of spawned this idea when I mentioned that I was wondering how many copies of Liz Determination would be ran if you didn't have a limit there. Liz Determination in Standard is by far the best draw supporter / setup supporter in terms of getting cards. Obviously, Crispin also is kind of a setup supporter, but accelerates energy, which is useful, and it does get you cards into your hand, being energies, but it's not a draw supporter, or it's not a setup supporter like Dawn is, or Hilda. It's close-ish to Hilda, but look at Dawn, Lily's Determination, you look at Brock Scouting, you look at Explorer's Guidance, a card that I really like, but Lily's is really just clearly above the rest. So how much would that card be played? And are there any other crazy things you could do with this? So let's start with Lily's Determination. When you look at good decks in the Pokemon TCG, let's take a look at some decks in the past. So let's look at, I guess, World Championships. That seems fine enough. I cannot sort by date, so I guess we'll look at the 2025 World Championship. The winning list here is running 10 supporters to set you up: 4 Professor's Research, 4 Ariano, and 2 Arven. It's actually running no other supporters that aren't set up. They get you cards, right? So they're useful at various different points in the game, but they are useful on turn 1 as well. Turn 1 going second. If we look at 2024, we see Iron Thorns. This deck's pretty different. This one's running, let's see, we have an Iono, 4 Arven, 3 Research, 3 Judge, and 2 Colress, which are kind of setup supporters. Some are at different levels. Also, Arven is not a traditional draw supporter. It is a search supporter there, but fulfills a similar role. And then we also see 4 copies of Pokegear 3.0. Pokegear 3.0 is an interesting card, letting you get a supporter off the top 7 cards of your deck. I am not a huge fan of this card. Ultimately, if your deck has lots of supporters that are already really good, then you don't need it necessarily. You just have the supporters that you need. You don't really need more deck space, not doing too much. And then if you don't have enough supporters, you're looking for one main supporter, you're probably not going to get it with this anyway. So it's okay. It's not a terrible card. Some people really like it. It's, realistically, it's a solid card. And some people like it a lot, and it works for some decks really well. But again, we see a lot higher of a supporter count. If we look at 2023, we'll just look at that one. That'll be the last one here. This one actually has a much stronger onboard draw engine. We see only 2 draw supporters in this stack, because we see that you have, and the one is Judge, and the other one's Iono as well. So both of them are disruption. Both of them are doing other important things, but we see that you have a lot of Pokemon Search to make it, or you have a good chunk of Pokemon Search to make up for it, and on top of that, the Pokemon Search is really explosive draw turn 1. So you don't really need as many supporters. VVMAX is a bit of a special case, Genesect V being probably a top 10 Pokemon of all time, in my opinion. I don't know exactly what that list looks like off the top of my head, and obviously comparing different eras is pretty difficult, but every Genesect V can draw you 6 cards every single turn, potentially, and you can use multiple Genesect Vs in the same turn as well. So it's just like an amazingly powerful and honestly kind of broken card that is doing something similar to the role of a supporter. When you look at a deck like this Dragapult list here, which is obviously a pretty normal deck. It's the main deck in the metagame. I don't know if normal is quite the right word, but it's the main deck. And we see that you're running, we got 5 supporters if you're counting Dawn here. If you're counting Crispin, it's 8, which is solid, but let's be honest, Crispin doesn't really count for this. Dawn, I think, kind of counts for it. Again, you set up not doing energy acceleration. We saw Lisa Sparkle in the VVMAX deck, which I didn't really count. I'm talking about really draw supporters or search for setup supporters. Maybe Dawn turn 1 going second isn't even that impressive. It's a little more mediocre. You do have Meowth EX, which does search things, and we do have that higher count of item search. See 12 copies of item search, and we see this in different decks. I'll get to item search in a moment, but with lilies, I definitely think people would like to play more copies. My guess is, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this in the comment section. Again, I talked about it in a recent video, and people commented as well and thought, who gave different answers. It definitely obviously depends deck to deck, but I think maybe 8 copies, somewhere in that 7 to 12 range feels about right. For decks, right? You want to be able to set up. Lilies Determination is probably the best way to do it, and it's honestly a cool card. I did a poll or a post asking cards that were well designed. Someone said lilies. I mean, lilies is a card that allows you to get into the game, and that's good, right? And playing the game is good. Lilies helps you do that, so that's pretty cool there. And you don't really have too much that does that either. Unfair Stamp actually is a card that is a powerful effect, similar to a powerful draw supporter, similar to Iono, similar to Marnie, a previous powerful draw supporter, better than Judge there. So just really, really good there. And I think, again, it would be in higher counts, and it would be interesting to see as well. Then we also need to talk about the item search here. And item search is interesting. Obviously, we have 12 item search cards. When we looked at these other lists, I think they were similar. I don't feel like going through all of them again, but it's a similar amount of item search, and we have good item search in Standard. Ultra Ball, Pokepad, and Bladed Buddy Poffin. 3 very good cards, right? That being said, obviously they are different, and I'm wondering what decks would look like if you could play more than 4 of one of those. Obviously, there are decks where your multi-price deck, Bladed Buddy Poffin, and Pokepad aren't really doing anything for you, like a basic box style deck, and then you can run more on Ultra Ball. Also, I'm someone who loves getting down to no cards in hand for things like Slowbro, so having more copies of Ultra Ball could be fun. You can have issues with it, but it's really powerful there. And then you look at decks. I think of something like maybe Alakazam, or like these single price focused decks. Buddy Poffin is very good in the deck, but after turn 1, it's not. After turn 1, it doesn't really do anything. So I'm wondering, honestly, just like, is Buddy Poffin a card that you would maybe cut some copies of for Pokepad or something like that? Like, Pokepad is really good getting you Dracloaks and Dreepies, and really getting your draw a hand with 2 Buddy Poffins or a hand with 2 Pokepads. You'd rather have that hand with 2 Pokepads. Obviously, you'd probably rather have a Buddy Poffin and a Pokepad, but I think that's interesting. I imagine there are some decks that would play lots of Pokepads there. If you have a Pokemon that can't be searched off of Buddy Poffin, for example. So I think that's definitely an interesting thought experiment there as well. I don't think it's quite as interesting. I think the one that to me is actually looking at this deck now that I see a Crushing Hammer, you could play that as like a 15 of or something, and that would be horrendous to play against. Would it be good? I don't know. It would be really annoying. Obviously, very inconsistent as well, but it is definitely an interesting thought experiment. Not an interesting way to play, but an interesting thought experiment there. Then there are also things like Night Stretcher. Night Stretcher to me, or things like, I mean Night Stretcher. It's not really another card super like in Standard. I think Night Stretcher, in my opinion, is the current, I don't know, it's one of the best cards in the game, right? It's obviously a recovery card, which is very useful. And being able to use recovery is something that, there are only so many cards that do. This is the main one, and it gets it into your hand, so it kind of acts like a search card, letting you play from this card. I've talked about this a bunch in the past. I might in the future at some point as well, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss that. As well as if you want to somehow see me play with extra copies as well, that'd be pretty interesting there. I don't think you can, like in live, you actually can add more copies, but you can't play with it. There was a point at which you could play with extra ace specs, but that's not exactly what we're talking about in this video here. But with Night Stretcher, if you can play this in really high quantities, you can play really low counts of Pokemon and play tons of discard and do some weird shenanigans with that, which I think could be really interesting. Would it be good? Probably, probably not, right? But it definitely seems a bit interesting to me. Again, probably bad, but definitely a cool idea, I think. And so I think it would be interesting in that regard. Then there are also some other cards that get kind of broken, or I don't know if broken, but get really interesting and much more playable with extra copies. The one is Dartrix. In Standard, Dartrix has United Wings attack. United Wings is an attack that does more damage for each Pokemon discarded with United Wings. There's also the Sizzlipede with Bug Out, but I'm not talking about that here because, well, it's coming out in the future. Well, it's not, sorry. More Bug Out Pokemon are coming out. Dartrix obviously had some more friends before they all rotated, but it's the only one left right now. So you could play 20 Dartrix or like 10 or 15 Dartrix and be doing a bunch of damage, which is a really funny concept. Is it good playing 20 Dartrix? Probably not, but it's definitely a funny concept that I think it would be funny to see. I don't know if it would be good, but I think it could be not bad. And then we also have another card in a similar boat, which is Veluza. Veluza has this attack here, or sorry, this ability, Food Prep, reducing your attack cost by the amount of Kofus you have in your discard. The issue is, well, one Kofu is not that good, right? Let's be honest. Unfortunately, it's kind of bad. But then also you have the other aspect to it here, which is that this card, Kofu doesn't discard stuff, and so it's hard to get them in the discard, and you can only play 4, right? So you obviously want to be able to theoretically attack for free. You can only attack for free if you have all 4 in the discard, so none of them can be priced, and you need them in your hand quickly. And you can't really search them. You kind of can search them. You can use like Meowth, but it's definitely a little bit sketchy there. So I think Veluza is actually pretty interesting with more Kofus, potentially. Not like crazy interesting, but somewhat interesting. There's also a Crabominable. This one actually has seen a little bit of play within Slowking, but that doesn't really matter. But it is a similar thing. It actually is not ever able to attack for free. With this ability, it's always going to be at least 1 water NG, but it is 250 damage for, again, 1 water. If you have those 4 Kofus in the discard, if you can play like 6, 8 Kofus, something like that, then you can be able to get them in the discard much easier, and you'll be playing them more, which might not be good. But it is definitely pretty interesting, I think, as a concept. So, there are other things like this as well. I think something like, for example, fossils, they're difficult to hit, so having more outs to them is good. Obviously, as I mentioned, you can play search outs to Pokemon, but you can't really play search for fossils other than Fossil Quarry, which I actually haven't played with too much. I'd love to hear people's thoughts on that, if it is like useful, other than with Bastiodon, which I've seen some, but Bastiodon's not that interesting of a card. But I do think things like fossils are cool. You could play more copies of something like Cinderace as well. A Pokemon that you can start. One of my favorite Pokemon in the TCG. It's kind of bad though, because if you don't start, it's useless. And you can't really guarantee that you start. You can play 4 copies. If you cut your basic Pokemon down pretty low, you kind of mulligan until you hit it. But if you play, for example, 10 Cinderace and then 1 other basic, you can really control your mulligans, which is interesting. Cinderace is just a really, really cool Pokemon. Honestly, I'm sure there's some other things they haven't thought of as well, so I'd love to hear those in the comment section. Let me make sure you hop down there and tell me your thoughts on this. If you think this would be, a fun idea. Obviously, it's kind of silly, kind of stupid, right? Let's be honest. But it's fun. I think it is really fun. But tell me your thoughts on that in the comment section. But I hope you enjoyed. Make sure you like and subscribe, because that really does help support the channel, and I really legitimately appreciate it. And it's free. But also huge shout out to my YouTube members who have joined the channel. That means a ton as well. I'd love it if you do that as well. But I hope y'all enjoyed. And as always, I'm excited to see you in the next video.